Hello class, welcome to our exercise technique lecture number 3, focusing on horizontal pushing and horizontal pulling. And that is in terms of horizontal to the body. So we are moving things in the horizontal push, we are moving loads away from our body. In horizontal pull, we are moving loads towards our body. Most of the time we're going to use our horizontal pushes using a bench variation, and our pulls are going to be row variations. So our horizontal push variations we'll discuss in class today are the bench press, the incline press, and the decline press. You can also perform these variations at these angles using cables. So you can use a cable press that is flat, a cable press that is an incline, a decline cable press. You can also use things like a landmine, which is an angled bar off the ground, and do vertical and horizontal and angled pressing. So there are other variations. However, we're going to focus on the bench variations for this class. With the horizontal pull variations, we have supported and unsupported horizontal pulling or rowing. We are going to teach the unsupported variation today because the unsupported variation has to incorporate the closed chain portion of the feet on the ground, which we aren't going to be laying on our stomachs rowing in most sports. We're going to have better transfer if we have to balance, as well as use the lower extremity musculature to stabilize while we row or perform our horizontal pull. So I'm going to go through some of the setup and execution for our pushing variation or horizontal pushing and horizontal pull variations, and then we'll talk about some transfer to sport. So with the horizontal push flat or the bench press, we're going to start with our 5 points of contact, which is left foot and right foot on the ground, the glutes on the bench, the upper back on the bench, and the head on the bench. So we have 5 points of contact. We'll have a slight arch in the lower back. Because we are not axially loading, we can have a little bit more of an extension at the lumbar spine. We're going to set up in our same hand position that we've been setting up for our deadlifts and our squats from our previous lectures, which is a thumb's width away from the edge of the knurling. That's often going to be our standard width. We can start moving to closer, wider grips using our pulling and pushing variations as we've progressed in the athlete's execution of the movement. So we'll start with our setup, our 5 points of contact, our hands on the barbell in a closed grip. We're not going to have an open or a thumbless grip. We're going to grab the bar tight. We are going to retract the shoulders. So the shoulder girdles have moved retracted, stabilized against the bench. We're going to bring the bar down to the chest. It's going to sit just above the sternum near the bottom of the pectoral muscles, as long as the forearm is vertical. So where we touch our body is based on our forearm position, our arm length, our body width, and it may be slightly different for each athlete. We want to keep that vertical forearm, bring the bar into position, and then press the bar out of that position so the bar should end up with hands in the bar above the shoulder joint. So we move from shoulder joint to our bottom position with a vertical forearm, back up to over shoulder position. So I'll show the execution here. We unrack the bar. The bar is above the shoulder joint. Bring the bar down with a vertical forearm, press the bar back over the shoulder joint. Vertical forearm over the shoulder joint. Whenever we re-rack the bar, similar with our squat, we are going to bring it all the way into the rack and then down into the J hook. We don't want to try to land it perfectly in the hook. That's how we miss racks. That's how athletes get hurt. So we make sure that we always hit the rack and bring it all the way down. We'll look at a few other angles here. Same setup, feet are flat against the ground, hips on the ground, shoulder blades against the bench, locked into position, head on the bench. We are going to bring down with a vertical forearm, press back up above the shoulder joint, down and back up. Rack the bar. Similar situation here. Feet are always on the ground. We do not want to let our feet come off the ground. We are going to lose stability, and we lose that drive that comes from our legs pushing and stabilizing the body so that we can get the most out of our press variation. If we look at the incline press, the setup is the same. It's our inclination, so the angle of our torso is going to be different. We still have our 5 points of contact. We have to use our legs to stabilize our body. We have to retract the shoulder blades and lock them into position. There's going to be slightly more upward rotation of the shoulder girdle and more scapular movement with the incline press as opposed to the flat bench press. So we have to be aware of that. There's going to be a little bit more movement. The load is not going to be as heavy in an incline press as opposed to a flat bench press. So we set up, same grip width. This is our medium grip, our standard width. We unrack the bar over our shoulder joint, bring the bar down with a vertical forearm, and press back out. It's going to have a slightly higher bar position on the torso as opposed to the flat bench press. So it'll be a little higher, closer to the collarbone on the upper pectoral muscles as opposed to the lower pectoral muscles as we see in the flat press. Press up, bring it down, and press up, rack that barbell. With the decline press, the body is at a decline position, so the head is further below the hips. We are pressing more forward and down. We are going to be able to use the most resistance using a decline press. We're able to use the lat musculature and the pec musculature to perform adduction with the humerus so that we can get a little bit heavier of a resistance. We know that we have to keep that horizontal forearm. The bar is going to land further down on the torso, so there is going to be a shorter range of motion as opposed to the flat and opposed to the incline press. But we lose our foot position. Our feet are not flat against the ground with a decline press, so we're not able to get the same amount of leg drive. We also have blood moving towards the head because our head is below our heart in this position, so there can be a little bit of a head rush, especially if you have higher volumes of repetitions. So that can be something that you need to be aware of when it comes to programming higher volume decline presses. Staying in that decline position, you lose balance as well as you have more blood moving towards your head in that position. May cause lightheadedness for your athletes or your general population who may have other issues. But we take it down, vertical forearm, press back up over the shoulder joint, keeping those shoulder blades locked against the bench. Boom, we're able to get a little bit more lat involvement and lower pectoral involvement, shorter range of motion, more loading capabilities with the decline as opposed to the flat bench press, and we have even less as we go up to the incline press. The more overhead we are pressing, the less load we're going to be able to press because there is the stability and this musculature involvement of the shoulder girdle. It's much more advantageous for us to press forward and down than it is for us to push up above our head. As we transition into our horizontal pulling variations, we are going to set up with this row. This is a horizontal pull, a horizontal row, also known as a pendule row, where the bar starts on the ground when we row. This is going to give us the best transfer to our deadlift because it helps with our setup position, as well as having that stable leg position gives us transfer to more athletic movements. So we set up just like our deadlift, position our body in the same way. We begin the movement like our deadlift to get our knees out of the way of the barbell, and we finish by rowing the bar just below the sternum at the lower edge of the ribs. So we set up in that same position like a deadlift, move the knees out of the way like we are beginning a deadlift, giving that leg drive and rowing the bar into our body. We do not want to come into a very inclined torso. We want to keep the torso as flat as possible. As our athletes progress in their ability to hold that position with their posterior chain, it's going to transfer to their deadlift, transfer to their squat, and transfer to more of their athletic movements because now they can maintain that hip hinge position while moving their arms. Most of our athletic movements have a hip hinge position, and then the arms have to move while the legs and the pelvis maintain that hip hinge position. So we'll watch that row one more time from each of these views. So we are rowing and moving our legs, keeping our torso position in that hip hinge position, and moving our upper body while our lower body is performing a stabilizing motion, as opposed to like our squat variation where our upper body is stabilizing while our lower body is performing the movement. So it becomes more athletic than a standard supported row, a cable row. We're getting more athletic transfer with our horizontal pull or our pendlay row. All right, so topics for discussion. I want you to start thinking about these so we can have the discussion on them. Similarities and differences between our pushes and our pulls, cueing, progression, what are some of the muscle actions, drawbacks, programming, things like that. But what this really does is allow us for transfer to rotation-based sports and upper extremity movements within these sporting actions that we see. So we're going to focus on sports for these push and pull and more health in our next section. But we are in a lunge position if we look back to our lower extremity, but then we are pushing with one hand and pulling with the other hand when we rotate. So if we think about a punch, we are pushing with one arm as we row with the opposite arm. So we create a rotation by performing a push and pull unilaterally with our upper extremities to create thoracic rotation. So in running, we have a push and pull action, a contralateral push and pull to create rotation. So we need to have strength within both. It's very rarely that you're going to do an isolated push from your back in sport, but developing that movement pattern can have transferred to different activities within our sports. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in our next one.